Tell me about your vision.
Yeah, so our vision story is it's actually multiple pages. So we take a little bit of a different view on vision than most in that it's not a sentence or a paragraph. We've actually got it written down because our conviction is that a vision is a detailed snapshot of the future of your business. So our vision is actually broken down into 7 categories. The first is the term of our vision, how many years out it is. The second is family freedom, because what's a vision if we're not building a business that's going to provide for those 2 things? The third are the financials. That's what gives us fuel to fund those things we want to do with our family and our freedom. And then also after that, then we talk about the product and service we're delivering. That's what generates the revenue. The team that's got to deliver it, the product and service, and then the ideal client who it's being delivered to or for. And then the 7th category is the culture. So ours is laid down, and currently the next maturation of our vision will come up here in the next few months. And it is for 8 coaches serving 120 clients. So currently we're at 6, serving 104, and we're closing in on that final vision.
And what is your vision? Like, if something that gets you out of bed in the morning, that you live for, that you work for, is that the same thing that you just mentioned, or is something different?
Actually,
Or
no. So let's delineate between our definition of vision, mission, and values, because I think those things are very, very different. And so vision is a detailed snapshot of the future of your business. So what I just shared was our vision. And that's detailed, again, multiple pages of what the future looks like or what we believe it looks like. Second, and I think what you're alluding to is what we would refer to as a mission statement. So a purpose statement, whatever. And mission statements, in our view, are 10 words or less. So these are very specific, very powerful methodologies about what we're waking up and, frankly, why we're waking up and doing what we're doing. So our mission is simple. It's to liberate owners from chaos, to make time for what matters most.
there you go. That's what I want to know. How did that come from? Tell me more about that.
Yeah, well, when there were a lot of people, even before we started our business, who were friends of ours, who were business owners, and in their business ownership, we realized that yeah, they were generating money, they were growing a business, expanding, scaling, et cetera, and yet their time at home seemed to be getting less and less and more conflicted with stress the entire time. And so we saw an opportunity to be able to try to liberate them from that chaos. Why? So that they can make time for the things that matter. So that's what we saw. Is this was actually happening with friends of ours, and we went to work putting things in place to try to liberate them from that.
Yeah. You use the word we. A lot of people that come on our show, they use the word I a lot. And that's one of the difference I see. Most people probably won't notice that, but I do. Where did that come from?
We started using the word we even before there was a we, sort of in our heads to go, hey, we're going to presume upon ourselves that there's going to be a team. Now there is a team. It's a team of 12 full-time professionals with some outsourced professionals as well on top of that. And so we're all here, our team at Business on Purpose, but we all have that one aim, is to liberate owners from chaos, to make time for what matters most.
Thank you for sharing that. What would you say is your why, Scott? Like, I know you mentioned that, but why that? Why do you do that? Why do
Yeah.
you
Well,
liberate
I
owners?
think what you're doing is you're using this tool that we call a why drill, and it's this idea that once you've got your mission in place, if somebody comes back to you and says, "Hey, tell me why," because essentially what you've just asked me is, "Why is your why important?" If the
Mm,
vision is the detailed snapshot of the future, your mission is what Simon Sinek would call your why, and so our mission is to liberate owners from chaos. You're asking me what's the why behind that, and I
mhm,
think the joy of seeing people come out of that, and when I get to see a husband and wife sitting down and not thinking about work, when I get to see a mom who's sitting down at her kitchen table at 11 o'clock at night because she's having a meaningful conversation with her child rather than sitting at that same table and doing work. Those are the sorts of things that get us moving. We realize that in Dietrich Bonhoeffer's words, time is the only thing that's irrevocable. You can't get it back. And so we want to help make that time, or better yet, take that time for the things that matter. So seeing people live into the things that matter, that's what drives us.
that's awesome. Um, when it comes to why you're here today, what is your goal for being on the show today?
Yeah. Well, we have a message, and that message is that mission. And there are so many owners who are living in chaos. We've got a common enemy that we call chaos and have classified that. We believe that that enemy, as is said in other places, that it prowls around like a roaring lion, looking to devour everything in its path. And we also think it's a recurring enemy, meaning you can beat it one time, it's just going to go back to the woods and come back out some other way. And so we believe that enemy is constantly on the prowl, and what we can do is to help equip with knowledge tools these owners and key leaders to be situated in a place where they can be liberated from that chaos and do the same for other people.
Tell me more about that. Tell me more. What do you define as chaos and some of the things you just mentioned?
Well, I'll tell you better yet than me defining the chaos. I'll just tell you the verbiage that we hear from a number of people as to what chaos is. And so the way it sounds is I'm constantly putting out fires all day. I've got all these balls that I'm juggling in the air. I wake up every day and I'm throwing Hail Marys. Or they start every day on their email or some other thing, which Cal Newport said, email is someone else's agenda for your day. So much of our day is spent on somebody else's agenda rather than on the agenda that is going to allow us to really push forward to the vision that we have.
And for you, Scott, um, where do you see yourself going um, in the future? Like, if you see maybe this might be the vision mission statement combined, or see the future, or like where do you see going with your vision?
Yeah. Well, ultimately, as I mentioned, we're at the maturation of our next rendition of the vision. We are literally in the process right now of thinking through and crafting the next vision, literally taking notes, having discussions with our leadership team around what the next thing is going to look for. I could tell you what I think it is today, but there's a high probability that it will likely change. But what we do see is that the next iteration of our vision is really going to revolve around our team and staying out in front of our team so that we're constantly providing them with opportunities to then equip them to go liberate owners from chaos so that they can make time for what matters most. So our next vision is really going to be a team-centric kind of vision, more so than this one was. We're going to put that out there and then bring a team in to help us get there.
Mm. Scott, what matters to you the most?
Yeah, good question. So there's a prioritization in my world that I look at everything through, and I've got a pretty intense relationship with God and how I see Him. I've got a pretty intense relationship with my wife, and I've got a pretty intense relationship with my kids. And so those three things in that order, and then work would be behind that, is certainly a priority for me.
When you mean intense, what do you mean by that? Like I,
So if I were to spread that out, we actually have four values that we work through as a family. We've got a mission as a family as well. It's to be a light, to create space through wisdom, adventure, and time around the table. But the values are the intense, which comes from the root of intentionality in that. And one of our values is actually intentionality. So we have togetherness, intentionality, perspective, and generosity. And so in doing that, when we sit down, when you sit around a table with us, it's going to be an intentional conversation most times. Rarely are we ever just sitting kind of scrolling or mindlessly wandering everywhere in our own heads or on different agendas. We're usually together having conversation, albeit sometimes uncomfortable. But that's what I mean by intense.
that's very interesting. I've heard both sides situations and I've seen both sides situation, but do you have a why you do that? Like why? I want to understand because it's a very different mindset and it's a very different way of doing things. I,
Yeah.
I'm I'm assuming you came to that way of living somehow and you decided to do it
Yeah,
somehow.
I'm sure there's a variety of touch points to come to that way of living. And yet at the same time, I also know we live in a world that sort of biases itself just to sort of wait on things to happen. And
Mm,
my wife and I have made a decision that we're going to wait on some things to happen, but there are other things that we realize that clock ticks. And so we're going to move forward on. And so we don't want to get to the end of our life and look back and regret that we didn't at least move towards these things. And so it's our opportunity to be able to move towards both each other and our children and the other people in our lives to be able to bring meaning and intentionality in that.
that's awesome. Thank you for sharing that.
Yeah,
Um, one more question for you, and I think that will be with the end of the session today, Scott.
great.
Um, what tips do you have for entrepreneurs?
Well, I'll go back to your initial question of vision. And usually the question we have is where do we start? What do we do? And the truth is the idea of vision is not novel. It's not new. We didn't come up with this in the 20th or the 19th or the 18th century. This concept's been around for literally millennia, since the foundation of time, especially based on your convictions of how the earth started and all of those sorts of things. But before anything happens, there's got to be some relative vision to what goes on. And so when we look at all of this and think and get asked the question, where do we start? Our number one place to start is articulate. What do you want? It's a simple question to ask. And it plays into this idea of vision. It'll help you get that detail to the snapshot of the future that you see. And so if there's a tip, I would just say, hey, sit down with a sheet of paper, scratch sheet of paper and a pen, write the question at the top, what do I want? And begin to jot out what it is that you want. And don't be afraid to write down what desires you genuinely have. The good news is you can match those desires to your values and see if they align. And if they don't, if you find that what you've written down does not align with the things that you value, then you can begin to adjust with that. But if you start moving down the tracks of marketing and sales and operations and administration, but you have no idea where you're going, I think it was Yogi Berra who said, if you don't have a vision, or if you don't know where you're going, you'll get there every time, or something like that. So these random things. So that would probably be my feedback. I don't know if it's good feedback, but it's at least feedback to say, hey, sit down and start with what you want.
For you, Scott, when did you do that for yourself and figure out what this is what you wanted to do?
So we did it on day one of our business. It's part of what we did is we did not wait to begin to offer clarification on that. And I would even say every year we still do that as a family. We start to write down next year what next year is going to look like, usually in November, to articulate that. So this is something that's been pretty common for us. A lot of the things in life that I don't do well, but this one we do pretty well.
Thank you for being here today. I'm really happy that you tuned in to Vision Pros Live. I'm looking forward to seeing your reactions as these episodes continue to move forward. This is going to get more and more fun. We'll have more and more engagement as well. We'll invite people to participate in the show. And thank you for giving us your time and attention. Have an excellent time building out your vision and becoming a vision pro yourself.